Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Out of the Woods. My name is Lindsay Kazarek, and I will be your host for the evening. I am joined by Casey Withers. He will be helping out with tech for the evening. I have with us two very special guests. I am going to turn things over to Abby Vandenberg here momentarily, but I want to go over a few housekeeping items before we start our program for the evening. At the bottom of your screen, we have our chat box and our Q&A box open for questions or comments that you would like to add to the presentation. Please feel free to pop your questions in there during the presentation, and we will get to those at the end for our question and answer session. Without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Abby Vandenberg to introduce our program for this evening.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, and thanks for coming. I am super excited to introduce our speaker for tonight. Mr. Joel Boutin is a graduate of the Institute of Agricultural Technology at La Pocatière, specializing in maple syrup production. And he has been an advisor and teacher since 1985, providing technical support to nearly 300 producers who together, the producers together, have more than 3 million taps. Mr. Boutin has been a maple syrup producer himself since 2006. And of course, he makes the best maple syrup in the world. And I would add for myself that whether it is maple trees, the forest, syrup production, technology, sap collection, Joel is probably one of, if not the biggest experts in the world from tree to bottle. So, and he is especially a specialist in the flavor of maple syrup. So I am super excited to have him present a tiny bit of what he knows for us tonight. So take it away, Joel.
Thank you, Abby. What a presentation. You raised the bar. Thank you. So tonight it will be interesting to talk about the flavor of maple. I understand that it's the beginning of the flavor of other kind of tree also, but we just beginning to understand how to make good maple syrup for the other kind of tree. Probably in 100 years, we'll be ready to talk about that because it's so complicated. So I just did my best English in the last minute. If you don't understand, it will be not better than that. Sorry. So we go. So how about the flavor? First, we have to start with what kind of tree, what kind of maple you're going to tap. Is it a sugar maple, a red maple? It could be a silver maple, a black maple. But for tonight, if we know better, the two that we know the best are the sugar and the red maple. And for here, and all the states and the province who tap those two kind of maple, we have different taste of syrup coming from those two type of tree. Both give a different taste, but are appreciated by different consumer group. There is a question of habits and memories. So if you grow and taste maple syrup since you're young, from the red maple, for you is probably the best syrup of the world because all the memories that you have in you is about that syrup. The same if you always from your beginning of age taste syrup from the sugar maple, your experience and memories are from that kind of syrup. So they are different, but they are both good. And the sugar maple have some more intensity with what we call the flavor of maple. The red maple have a tinier intensity of that true maple taste. But the other taste that you can find, some caramelization, some vanilla, are both are present in both. So doesn't matter if you have one or the other. And some people do some fantastic syrup with a mix of those two, because there's a larger producer who produce the syrup with a mix of the sap of those two. So red maple has uh, has always had a very big possibility, and some people don't tap them. And I can encourage you to tap the red maple with no problem. You will have something really interesting with that. So about other kind of trees, we have the big leaf maple that we can find in the west part of the America. And we this is a leaf and a bottle of that syrup. What is interesting is the syrup in that bottle of big leaf maple is really dark, but it's not because of the sap. It's because the people very far western part in those years have probably less knowledge how to do maple syrup. So uh, as you go farther and farther in west, less information are available, and people do as they can. And that coloring is not because of the sap, it's because of the knowledge of the people who do it. It's the same at the bottom of that page. We have here a really dark syrup coming from maple trees in Russia. And those people are really far from here. The knowledge is really low how to make maple syrup, and they do something really dark like this, not because of the quality of the sap again, because of how they work, how they have knowledge to do the syrup. So no matter where you are, the sap that is coming from the trees is always perfect with a fantastic potential. After it's coming out from the tree, it depends of you. How you bring the sap to the sugar house, how you boil it will make the difference. But all the sap from all the kind of maple can produce a really light coloring syrup with a tiny taste, and a really uh, not tiny, but something light is possible. Silver maple, black maple, Negundo maple in Saskatchewan, everybody can do maple syrup. So other kind of tree also, butternut, black walnut, beech, birch. Some people tap them and have success because a lot of trees can produce sap, and all those kind of syrup have their own personality, really different from the maple, but really interesting too. So if we come back with the maple, the taste is changing as the season progress. This is for the eastern part of America, uh, starting in January, ending in May, depending where you live. You have here the normal evolution of the taste that you can find in maple syrup. You can start your season with the metabolism taste. After that, naturally, you will have a lot of vanilla. And after that, you will have a strong sugar taste not complex. And after that arrive the maple. The true maple taste is not there from the beginning. And after that, you will naturally find some caramel in your syrup. And after that arrive the late season taste, like buddy and even sponge candy. So depending on where you live, the moment of the year can be different. If you're in Ohio or West Virginia, you will probably start that in December. And if you are really northeast in Canada, you will start that in March. But again, you will have all those kind of taste. They all coming back one after the other. It just start not at the same moment, depending where we live. So there are two large group of syrup that we can see in the normal production. A delicate taste, mainly sweet and vanilla, or a complex taste with maple and caramel. These are the two large group that we're gonna talk tonight. Uh, what will be the difference between those two? It's because of them, microbes. Microbes will do the difference because I said each drop of sap, no matter if it is in New York State, in Quebec, Ohio, or even in Washington State, each drop of sap from a kind of maple is perfect because it contains no microbes, it has sugar, and all the other things that can produce something good. But nothing will happen if there's no microbe in the process. The microbe are there to take the sap, work it, change it, and after it change it when we boil it, we have different kind of taste. Imagine a perfect operation where each drop of sap coming from the tree will directly go to the evaporation without any times, any delay, and any contamination from any microbes. You will produce a syrup really, really, really light color, but no maple taste. Only sweet, maybe a tiny vanilla. Microbes are there to process and change the sap. We need them. So they are not dangerous and they are useful. You can compare the sap with other kind of food like bread, wine, cheese. If there's no fermentation or any microbe activity, you will never add good bread, wine, or cheese. You will have flour, vine grapes, or uh, only milk. So the microorganism present in your sap is really essential. So if there's no fermentation, you will have no maple taste. If you have too much fermentation, it will be really caramelized. Too much fermentation, you can go too far and you have molasses or rupee taste. It it's all a question of balance. This is the same sap. At your right is the sap just coming out from the tree. Perfect. With no any fermentation from any microbes. And the same sap at your left, after many hours, is fully contaminated with a lot of microbes. There's so much microbe that you cannot see through the sap. This is the same sap, but with the delay, with the contamination. And if we boil those two sap, the one that you write will give you a light coloring syrup with a sweet taste. And the one that you left, probably a big, strong caramel and molasses taste. And in between, you have so much possibility, depending how much fermentation you will have and how you're going to boil your sap with what kind of evaporator. You can produce between those two extreme meat, or those two really different sap. Between those two, you have maybe 10, 20, 30 kind of different syrup that you can produce. So this is a normal season. When you start your season, all your tubing are clean. They are, excuse me, they are clean because you probably wash it at the end of the season last year. So when you have clean tubing and cold water, cold weather, your sap is really in good condition with low contamination of microbes. And when you boil it, you have a light color syrup. As the season go, the weather is getting warmer and the microbes are getting more present in your sap. You have more activity with them and it creates a different kind of sap, getting you a different kind of syrup. And as the season go, you have more caramelization and you have darker syrup. This is all normal with a normal sap and normal evaporator. But if you lose control, too much contamination, you can go with sour syrup or you can go with rupee syrup. When you have that, it's because you have too much microbe activity and you lose control. When you're not sure of what you're doing, change the word sap with milk. And after, you can ask question. Okay, is it okay if I take my sap in a tank outside with a warm day with a lot of sun and make it waiting to tomorrow before I boil it? Okay, we do the exercise with milk. Is it okay if I have a tank of 1,000 gallon of milk outside with the sun and decide to wait tomorrow to take care of that milk? No, we don't do that. So when you take decision about your tubing or your processing, um, always think about what I do. Can what I construct now, can I wash it? Can I sanitize it in any ways? If you say, no, I will be never able to sanitize that, stop and rethink about doing it. Nice picture. Thank you, people of Vermont, for the proctor that gave us that fantastic picture. So there was a survey a couple of years ago in US and it said, hey, how do you clean your tubing system? And the large majority don't clean or use any sanitizer. So that was a good thing to know. People don't wash tubing for the majority. And it was 12 years ago, but we know that it doesn't change a lot. Many people don't wash their tubing after the season. So when there's no sanitation, with the years, your sap is getting more contaminated each year because your tubing is more dirty from the year after year. It doesn't clean itself. It's not the auto clean. Like, you will lose control eventually. And you know that because when you build a new system on another forest, everything is new, everything is clean. Wow, what a fantastic sap. And after that, with the years, It never come back again if you don't wash your tubing. So we can do some mechanical tricks to expect to have better result, like use a refrigerated bull tank like that. It sounds good, but if the sap is like this, and I put the sap of bad quality sap in that, it will not work. People who want to put sap or concentrate in the bull tank with refrigeration, they will have a real success with that technology if the sap is in good shape with not too much contamination. Yes. So imagine if in your releaser or extractor, you see some that kind of slime coming from the tubing. That means that you are way too much contaminated with microbes. If you put that sap in the bull tank with concentration with RO or not, it will not work. It's too much contaminated. Mechanically, what can we do also if you take air injection and you push some air through the liquid in the pans in your evaporator, it will give you a lighter color syrup. So your syrup will be more light coloring, but it cannot prevent the rupee or the sour syrup. So yes, if I use that technology in my evaporator, I will produce a better coloring of my syrup, but I'm not, I will not avoid any problem of too much contamination like rupee or sour. So again, this will not correct a, la a lack of sanitation. So we should wash our tubing. If we talk about tubing 20 years ago, it was like that. We push some sanitizing in the wood with a mix of air and water and chlorine. So we do that in the past. Now we wash differently. There's there's so much possibility how to wash tubing, but we have to find one that is possible to do for you. Some of you have buckets. We have to wash the bucket at the end of the season. Some of you have gravity system. We have to find a way to sanitize the spout, the drop line, the laterals, and main lines if you have some, without any pump if you don't have, because you are by gravity. But you have to find a way to sanitize all those tubing. Because again, imagine it's milk. Some milk have passed through your tubing all the season and you decide to don't wash it. Imagine next year, after all the summer, how it will be in your tubing. So we have to find a way. So again, if you build something just before finish, ask yourself, can I wash this? How can I be sure that sanitizer will pass everywhere in that system? I'm not sure. So if you're not capable to wash everything, rethink and redo. Here's the same. Wow. 4-inch pipe, 1 mile long, to bring vacuum to another place. So it permit to that person to have a big pump in one place and bring some vacuum to other place only with tubing for to do the vacuum. So it will not need some other pump in the other station. fantastic. But we know that sometime there are some sap is going in that big tubing. How will I wash that? If you say it will never happen, Joel, I will never have sap in that tubing. Yeah, you can have a magical uh, pensée, magical thinking, but if you cannot wash it, you should not do it. This is the new way to install tubing. I will never wash my main line if I put a plug at the end. So it's sure, because if I don't put a valve there, it's sure that I will never wash that main line. So that's here in Quebec too. That's the way that new tubing are installed. So people are good to work in the woods. They are good plumbers to fix the 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 tubing. But when it's the time to talk about sanitation, no, there will be no sanitation in that system. So the sap will be perfect the first year, and all the year after, you will have decreased quality of the syrup. So here, there's a sanitation for each drop line. Suck some sanitizer when the season is ending. Presently, the vacuum pump is running, and we will pass a sanitizer for for each drop line. So I'm sure that I will wash them and sanitize them. It's possible to do that in Canada, in USA. There are some product sanitizer that are authorized for both countries. For organic, normal syrup, it's possible to wash all the tubings for everyone. And for the main lines, I can do the same. We can suck a sanitizer. The example here and here that can be done for you people of US is some kind of peracetic acid. Peracetic acid is fine. And if you go to 600 ppm, that's the concentration of the peracetic acid in that bucket in clean potable water. You will suck that. So you can figure a 5 gallon of mixture for 1,000 feet. So at the end of the season, you can wash the tubing and you can wash the 516. Maybe some of you said, oh, I should know that a couple of weeks ago so I can do it. You still have time to do it because until it's completely frozen, if you have a vacuum pump, you can start your pump and you can do the washing of your 516 and your main line with peracetic acid, and you will see things like that arrive in your releaser, and you'll probably say, I think it's a good idea to wash my tubing now with that was in my tubing. And now it's getting out. And the sap, the quality of the sap would be better. So once a year, do that. Because remember, this is the sap that you should have. And this, at your left, this is the sap that maybe we have because the tubing are dirty. underground underground tubing is the problem because we see it as a solution for our problem, but no, the when you put your tubing in the ground, you will have other reality. It's never frost in the ground if you go 4 feet deep, and because of that, there's a different kind of microbe that are living in your tubing 12 months a year, and it gives most of the time a bad taste, of sour syrup, and we have to wash it and sponge. Sponge is the solution to help to clean the tubing in the ground. So all the tubing in the ground need to have sponge to clean them. So sponge is our friend. This is interesting. When Vermont present to producer some sample of bad taste to help people to recognize them, they present body, metabolism, and sour. Sour is a new problem and a bigger problem because bigger operation but no sanitation have more sour syrup than in the past, and more people have underground tubing. So you can have sour without um, underground tubing. Just never wash your mainline and just never wash all your system, and you will see that sour taste arrive in your syrup. It's like a kind of apple juice acid, and that's not the best taste that you can have. So sap is sugar. Handle it like it's milk. You want a glass? You sure you want a glass of your sap? Transportation is something that you have. How many times do we clean correctly those tank? Color of the tubing will have a big influence for your syrup. More dark and black is your tubing, more hot will be the sap. More white is your tubing, and more cold will be your sap. So the white tubing has disappeared because when it's frost, it doesn't defrost enough rapidly. So the white tubing has practically disappeared. But we have blue and green now, and those two color produce a sap colder than the black one. So when you choose your color of tubing, you choose the type of syrup that you will produce. More light coloring you choose for your tubing, more tiny taste you will produce. And when you go with the darker tubing, darker coloring tubing, you will have a different kind of syrup. So it starts with the tubing. What color you would choose. After that, how many sap will flow through your tubing? If you have a really almost full tubing, this will provide you a colder sap. If you just put a few tap in your tubing, because there's just a few flow, the plastic will warm your sap. That will give you a darker syrup. We try to have the last one at your right. When you have a good flow, you expect that your main line will be never more full than half. So the other half is there to bring out the leaks if you have a vacuum system. So for people who have vacuum system, this what you expect to have. Not too full, not too empty for your main line. It's not the same for the 516 or the 316. It is this is really about, that picture is really about the main line. If you have buckets, the difference between cover or not cover is will be the temperature of the sap. When you don't have cover and when you have snow, you will have uh you will have the X-ray, the sun will produce a kind a reflection on the snow, and it will eat the buckets. If you have a cover, it will eat less. The difference between the temperature between have a cover or not is almost 7 to 8 degrees Fahrenheit. So that makes a good difference for the microbes. So it's not almost all just for the rain. It's to keep the sap colder to have a bucket. Oh, excuse me, 11 Fahrenheit less with the cover. And what about vacuum? Does the vacuum change my taste? No, we never see a difference with the level of vacuum for the taste. That doesn't mean that if you have bucket and you go to tubing, that you will not have a change. That's not what I say. It's when you put vacuum, no matter the level of vacuum you will do, it have no influence on the taste. The biggest influence is to have the tubing. It's not the vacuum. It's the tubing that changes your syrup. And why does the tubing change my taste? What is the color of your tubing? Do you wash your tubing? So all the thing that we just say a few minutes ago. Uh, does the slope of the land have an impact on my taste? Uh, if you have a nice slope, easy to see like that, or really flat lands, yes, the flat lands have a big impact because it's more difficult to install correctly to being on the flat land because we need a slope in our tubing. And if you have slope in the land, if you can read easily how your land is, you can have a nice slope on your tubing. And if you don't have any slope in the land, you have to put the tubing with a slope. So why people on flatlands do a darker syrup with more caramel and sometimes with less uh, yield, it's because it's more difficult to well install tubing in flatlands, but it's not impossible. It's more difficult. Yes. So stacking and leveling are a necessity. Uh, have a high tension wire will help you to have a nice slope. This is not the case here. If you're able to roll your wire like this, that's not a high tension wire. This is what you want to have. You are supposed to be capable to do like GR here from Vermont. Eh, All your main must be to keep the slope like that. So this is not easy to install something as hard like this, but this is our target. So do you put the foot on your stack? Do you have a good level like that? Numeric level that give you a number to be sure that you know exactly what is the level of each foot of each main line that you have in your woods. Um, so yeah, this is on my farm because I produce maple syrup and I have to do everything that I say to the people, and I try. So here the slope is just a 1%. That means 0.6 degree of slope. So the stack are really close each other. It's 10 to 12 feet, 10 to 12 feet between each stack. So to be sure that the sap is going down, no matter if there only 1% of slope. So this will not work. You will have sap sitting here each night. So it will frost and you will miss the beginning of the day tomorrow. And here there's a lot of micro activity also. The quality of the sap here will be really bad. So this will be not correct. I think that will be not correct. So that that is for the sap. If we go in the sugar house and you have a dragon in your sugar house like this, what will be happen? So about our two possibility. Oh yes, excuse me. This is the second part that I call what is the syrup of the future? Now that we know that sap could be perfect, but it depends how I bring it to the sugar house. So now that we have that in mind, so it's possible for you to decide what kind of syrup you want to do. This is the first possibility. I want to do only really nice golden syrup, really pale, with mostly a sweet flavor, with very little maple taste. That's not, the maple is not my target. This is a possibility that you can do because sap is perfect when it's coming out from the tree. If you're processing rapidly, properly, you will produce that kind of syrup with any kind of maple from East Coast to West Coast. So if it is your target, what will be the use for that syrup? For the buyers, when they buy a really light color, most of the time they don't bottle it because sometimes they don't have enough to repeat the year after, depending of the weather. So they use it for the blend. So they have darker syrup, medium syrup, and really light syrup. But the really light color, that this one is used in the blend to have an average coloring and taste. The possibility number one, the really light color, could be used as an ingredient. This is the Maple Grove green tea, and they want to sweet it, and they use for sweet pure maple syrup. I'm sure that when they do the thinking of that product, they want us to taste their tea. If we put a really strong caramel maple syrup in that, they will say, hey, the syrup is too much present in our final product. Do we have something that is from maple but with less taste of caramel? Yes, we have that. So people who produce really nice golden syrup, really pale, can be used as a blend or can be used as an ingredient like this. Also, when people want to present a flavor maple because they want to present to the market a vanilla, coffee, cinnamon like we have here, blueberry. There's probably more than 20 kind of add flavor in maple. Again, they don't want a too strong caramel or maple taste. They want a tiny sugar taste that they can put another kind of taste that people will be easily recognize. If the maple syrup that they use to do that kind of blend is too strong with maple, the people will not see the cinnamon or the coffee or the vanilla easily. So that's a possibility of use for that syrup. The second kind of syrup that you can choose to do is something with more personality, darker syrup, like amber or dark, where you can find the maple and the caramel more easily, and it is really easy to find. And in that case, anybody who know maple syrup, well, will like that kind of syrup. This is a bed and breakfast. This is the breakfast that I have one morning in that place. The syrup in that jar was extremely good, well chosen. The maple cream was done with a really complex flavor maple syrup that create a really rich and complex maple cream that was perfect. So if I take that syrup to do the same thing, I will probably say, no, thank you. I will prefer a jam or a peanut butter, but on the table like this, personally, I will prefer the possibility number two, something more complex. So the two kind of syrup are have their own market. It depends what you want to do with it. So the darker syrup can be used again in the blend too. Buyers will use it in the blend. And for you and me, that packaging, we packaging a part of a syrup. If we do some barrel, we will produce uh, um, retails too. Some of you do only retails. So imagine that you have just that syrup. You got to find a consumer that will love that nice golden syrup. If you have that kind of syrup, more complex, you will probably find more easily a consumer for that. Except if you go on the new market somewhere else where they never taste maple syrup, never ever, you can bring this and say, this is the most fantastic syrup in the world. If they don't know that, they will say, hey, thank you. And they will become a fan of that kind of syrup. There are some people who prefer that, and they know they know this, and they know this, and they choose this one because they don't like any caramelization, and they like what they like is the something really soft like this. Okay, it's possible. So there there's place in the market for all those two different syrup. But what I try to do now with my really bad English is that it's you that will choose what kind you want to produce. You can produce any of those syrup depending of how you manage your tubing, how you clean your tubing, and with what kind of evaporator you would choose. You can go in the direction of really light color or a darker with different taste. You choose. So if you go in the eastern part of US, where people know maple syrup for years, you probably have a bigger demand for traditional tasty syrup like this. But it's not impossible to find new consumer that will prefer the light color and light taste. I said maple syrup taste is all about memories. If I bring to my mother a bottle of syrup and it's really light color because it's the beginning of the season and my tubing I clean and it's a golden and I give her that for Easter. She would say, "Thank you, my son, but I hope you're going to bring me real maple syrup soon." Oh boy. She's old and all the memories that she have with his brother and sister when she was young in the sugar house was probably a darker syrup and they have fun and that's what she reminded his head. So she tried to have again that good memories and sensation with the darker syrup. So a month later, if I come in the Mother's Day, and with the darker syrup of the more at the end of the season, she said, "Thank you, my son. This is real maple syrup." She's my mother. That's what she prefers. That's possible. And a lot of our consumer are not young. So you have to be sure that the syrup that you produce correspond to the taste of your consumer. Taste all your syrup each day, each year. And more you taste it, more you will become good to taste and see some difference between the one of today and the one of yesterday are not the same. Something appear. Yep, it changed every day gradually. And if you change tubing, if you change the evaporator, you will see the some different in your syrup, and you will remind, oh, that was not like this before. The change that we made have an impact. Or sometimes about like you are not sure that you want to buy a RO osmosis because you are afraid to use an osmosis RO and you are afraid that it will change too much the taste of your good maple syrup. And a small RO just take out natural water that you don't have to evaporate. So you will keep everything that is good in maple syrup in the concentrate. So you will have the same taste. If you have a good evaporator, using an RO will not change the taste. That's fantastic. You will save time. But if you change color of your tubing, that would change everything. So that's in Syracuse, where you can choose your kind of maple syrup. That's a good way to sell because, you know, there's probably 4 kinds of syrup with 4 different tastes. So with that, you can make happy all kind of consumer because personally, I prefer this one. That's mine. But I have consumer that prefer that one. You know, I will bottle both. And I will offer to my consumer both when they come in my farm. Joel, do you have the syrup? I don't only have syrup. I have the best syrup in the world. But what kind of best syrup of the world do you want? I have this one and this one. And you know what? I have other one too. So I can they can taste and choose the one they like more. So we're almost done. Now that we know that, if we have to choose what kind of evaporator, we have to process the sap. So having the right evaporator to do the kind of syrup that you want. You know, in the old time, it was simple. You have a pan, you put wood and fire under, and you have syrup. If it is the kind of syrup that you like, the technology that you want to use have to produce the same kind of heat, to produce the same kind of taste. So imagine that we compare all the different evaporators to this one. But remember, everything that I will say is right if you have a nice sap. Is your sap is like this, no matter the kind of evaporator, maybe you will not find the taste really good. So there's two parts for the taste. What is the quality of my sap? And how will I boil it? Both will give you the complete taste. What is the quality of my sap? How will I boil it? To produce this one, you have to choose technology that will reduce caramelization and Maillard reaction, because caramelization will give you color and a kind of taste. Maillard reaction will produce the maple taste. And if you don't want them, you have to choose technology that do not produce caramelization and Maillard reaction. There are 5 techniques to produce this kind. You can use a wood pellets, wood chips, oil, propane, natural gas with air injection. Because no matter the kind of fuel that you use, if you are an air injection, the air injector will reduce the caramelization and the Maillard reaction. And you will produce the number 1 syrup. The one is really light color. You can produce light color also. Excuse me, that is the same. It's the air injection. The second way is to use a electric evaporator. This is a EcoVap evaporator. That kind of technology, because of that type of heat, will reduce the Maillard reaction and the caramelization. And it's really easy to produce really light golden syrup with that. Also, the new Master E from CDL is a kind of electric and evaporator. It's more complicated than just an electric, but at the end, you will have an extreme light color and the taste is really tiny. And if you want to have that kind of syrup, this is the perfect machine. So that's another way to produce really light colored golden. Number 4 technique, the steam. The steam evaporator. There's a lot of steam in US that is being used for boiling sap. Here, because of the law, it's really complicated here to have steam evaporator. When I see those type, it's always in USA. So you have a boiler that produces steam, and it is extremely efficient. And with that kind of heat, you see the color of the syrup here. It's really, really, really a fantastic golden. Really easy to do the golden with light color and light taste with the steam. This is a CDL steam R7 was perfect to do that. And for those who will produce another kind of syrup, you see, this is the big evaporator to produce maple. And just beside, it's a 2x8 steam evaporator to produce beech syrup in that farm. They produce both in parallel. And of course, you need the energy to do that. Here it is propane. Another way to reduce the caramelization and the Maillard reaction is to go with really high Brix. I said that RO will not change the taste, but until a certain point. If you go really high Brix, because now we can go to 40, at that when you go really high, you will produce another kind of syrup because the time of evaporation is really reduced. So because now we have fantastic RO that can produce 30, 35, 40 Brix, the syrup will be different. But to produce that kind of syrup, all the machine that I just present, you need power. Sometimes you don't have as much power, and sometimes you don't have any power. So almost maybe you have a phone that's good for you, but maybe no electricity. So uh, imagine that you want those fantastic machines, but you need a generator. That's not easy. This one will be probably better than this one. There's large operation that use electric evaporator that have that kind of generator. That is special. So this is maybe your land. This is the power in your land now, but they don't offer you some power. They just bring it on another place. And I will finish with that. I'm almost done. So if this is the kind of syrup that I want to produce, a darker one, the 5 techniques to produce them, you can use the wood, the pellets, the oil, the propane without the air injection, the wood, the pellets, and the oil and the propane. If you are less than 25 Brix, can produce a really complex and rich maple taste with a balanced caramelization in it. So it's not because it's oil that the taste will be different. Maybe your oil burner is not well adjusted and you burn your syrup, but it's not because it's oil. It's a question of adjustment of the boiler because oil, propane, wood pellets, wood, split wood, all those, they all have the possibility to produce you a really nice and rich and complex maple syrup. The RO, we just said, no problem until 25 Brix. After 25 Brix, the taste from 25 to 40, uh, as you go higher than 25 in direction of 40, you will see the complexity of your syrup is getting less complex and compared to below 25. Wood. Wood is something to consider because you have it. There are some trees falling each day almost in your forest. This is a really economic fuel. And when you use it, it's you can have some tools like racking that will help you to work. I think in the last years, people don't consider the woods as much as they can. I have people with who I work that use wood for 10, 20, 40, 100,000 taps, and they use split wood. It's possible now. We can have many tools to bring to work. The shed could be a part of the sugar house. It's possible too. So and if you have and if you go to high Brix like this one, it's go to 35 Brix with a rack of 6 by 6 feet with a log of 2 feet long. he can do 4 to 8 barrel, depending if you have 25 or 35 bricks. That's not a lot of wood for a lot of barrel of syrup. Wood could be considered. Pellets also more automatic. You can do wood chip. There's some people in US and in Canada that use that kind of fuel. So if you use the pellets, you have to buy them. Use the chip, you can do them. Um, this is again in USA, a normal oil evaporator that is being transformed to be to bring chips like that. So why not? Propane and natural gas are a good option for people who are using oil. These they they um, they produce the same kind of quality and taste of syrup with less niter in the pan. Really easier to clean. Um, the level in your pan. This is this. It is not filtered. That's why it looked like this. But at your left, it's and at your right, it's just changing how deep we put the liquid in the pan. And more you have liquid in the pan, darker is the syrup and more complex the taste is. So you can go with a thicker level in your pan and you will have a completely different taste of syrup. So depending of how much you put in the pan, it will change the taste. Depending of the bricks of your arrow, we go thicker. This is for security to work better. Um, we can delay the exit of the syrup. If the syrup is already done at 66 or 67 bricks, and you keep it in the pan, just a few minutes, you will have a more sugar content in your syrup, but after we can re-put some water in it. But if you get out from your evaporator later at 68 or 69 bricks, you will have a different kind of taste with more caramelization if you want it. And after you re-put quality water in it to come back to 66 to 67, and you have something really different. Uh, those those photography are to propose to you to do like that, man. Don't open the valve completely. Open your valve with a smaller flow. That will permit to the float to keep the level everywhere. And you will have a different kind of syrup if you let your syrup going slowly out of enough rapidly because it's ready, but you don't have to open completely. The same here. You see at your right, it's like a panic. Hey, we have to get out the syrup because it's ready. No, you can open just a few just to permit the syrup to getting out, and because you will not create batches, it will flow like constantly, and you will produce another kind of syrup. Okay, reduce the heat. Sometimes we put too much wood or too much oil, and that create caramelization again. And it will have too much niter formation, and your consumer is not sure to like it. Can we change a little bit this app? Of course. You maybe heard about aeration of the sap. This is a way to put some air in the sap. If you have buckets, you don't have to do that. If you have tubing and you're really airtight, yes, because when your tubing is really airtight, you taste your sap. It's not really good. You can just put some air in it and you taste it. It tastes better. So this is a pump, some pump just doing a circulation of the sap and it makes splash like this, and the syrup is completely different. That's another way. You with a pump, you push the sap in the tubing and you put some tiny hole. With the pressure, you see the yellow formation here in the foam. That means that something is happening in that reaction, and the syrup is completely different. How do we know that the sap is ready? You can use a tool like this. If you heard about Steve Childs, who work with glucometer like that to help you to produce good confection, we use the same uh, glucometer to check the sap, and there is no glucose when the sap is coming out from the tree. It's only sucrose. But there is glucose in the sap in my tank in the sugar house, because between the tree and the sugar house, microbes change my sap, and they cut the sucrose in two parts, and those parts are invert sugar. And one of them is fructose and the other one is glucose. So if I find some glucose in my sap, that means that I have microbial activity. And if I have big number of glucose in my glucometer, that means that I have a lot of microbial activities. So imagine that you evaluate your sap and you take some notes. When my sap have that amount of glucose, I produce that type of syrup. And maybe in a couple of years, if you see me, you say, Joel, with my tubing and the way I wash my tubing and with my evaporator, my best number of glucose is 2.5. And when I have 2.5, wow, this is the best syrup in the world. I try to get it. Wow. So you have a number to reach. And the last picture for the organizer. Don't panic, it's done. So, food. Imagine that you have meat. You can have a piece of meat that the cow is out is dead this morning, or at your right, the beef is in the refrigerator, the part that we want for a month. The difference of those two pieces of meat ready of the morning or compared to the one that stay in the fridge for a month, this when we're gonna taste it, it have two different tastes. It's like the preparation. And after that, depending with what kind of heat I will cook my meat, will produce the taste that I want. Imagine that you have a really good piece of meat and you put it in a plastic bag and you boil it. Yes, you will have a prepared meat, but it is cooked in water. Probably the taste will be really different because there will be no Maillard reaction and no one. And in the steak, that's what we like. It's the same for us. If your sap is too much perfect, there's no taste. If it's too contaminated, it's like overcooked. It's too much. You have to be balanced. So taste your syrup. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. We have some questions here. If you are ready to take those.
Yes, I'm ready.
Wonderful. So our first question is from Jeff, and he asks, we have a small operation and often finish or can in a smaller pot. I've heard using anything other than stainless steel can affect the taste. Is this true?
Yes. I understand that you have two different moments to boil. So you have a larger evaporator to bring the sap almost to the end, and after you take your sap on a small pot where you can maybe with propane or something like this, you can finish with a stainless steel container. Um, when the evaporator is smaller than a 2x8, we practically almost have to do that. It's really difficult to finish the syrup at 66 bricks on a 2x5 or a 2x6 because the way this small evaporator is designed, it will be stuck at at 80% of the result, and it's like it's never ending to the syrup. So it's a good idea with really small evaporator and the small operation to bring it at probably if you have a thermometer and you adjust it to 0 in water, your syrup is supposed to be ready at +7 Fahrenheit. With a small evaporator, you bring it to +3, and you take 1 or 2 or 3 gallons of that mixture, and you finish it on a smaller pan just beside until the end, and that's the best way to work with a really small evaporator.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Keith. He would like to know what you think of using ultraviolet light on the sap.
Okay. When we see ultraviolet used in other industry, the flow rate is really tiny. So the rays, ultraviolet, can pass through all the liquid. We have most of the time bigger flow rate, and when we use it, the UV is only works on on the the surface of the passage of the sap. So there's a big part of the sap that is not passed through with the UV. No, have no treatment because we have too much flow rate, and most of the time it doesn't work. Except if you buy a really efficient X-ray, not X-ray but UV, and that's really rare. So at the end, the result is most of the time really disappointed. Excuse me. You should more work on the washing of your tubing. So you work in the woods, and you will not need to use that kind of technology in the sugar house.
Thank you. Just quickly, Joel, Dr. Mike Recklin, who is faculty emeritus here at the university, wanted to pass along thanks for your great presentation and wanted to put emphasis on the importance of your, he said, thank you for placing emphasis on the importance of sanitation and cleaning. He had to quickly leave because he was watching from a restaurant and they were closing, but he really enjoyed your presentation and wanted to pass along his sincere thanks.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Gary. Did he understand correctly that to refrigerate sap properly, it needed to be below 30 degrees Fahrenheit?
Yes, I passed rapidly on that picture, but yes, if you're only go to for 50 or 40, there's a lot of kind of microbes that are completely comfortable. And at that weather, they will produce all the activity that they need to destruct our sap. So 40 is not enough. We have to go to 32 to be sure that it's almost frozen. If it's concentrate, we go to below 32, like 29, 30, 31, to reduce at the maximum the microbial activity. Because if you stay to 36 or 40, it will not be enough cold for the kind of microbe that we have.
Wonderful. I think that we have answered all of the questions that are currently in the chat and the Q&A at this time. So if Casey, if you would like to launch our poll, that would be great. And if anyone has any other last minute questions that you would like to ask Joel or Abby, because Abby is still on the webinar, please feel free to go ahead and put those questions in the chat box or in the Q&A, and we will get to those before we end our program for this evening. As a reminder, we will not be having our Out of the Woods program next month in November. We will be pausing for the Thanksgiving holiday, but you can join us back here in December on Thursday the 19th for a special big leaf maple presentation. We will be joined with Dr. Mike Recklin and special guests that he met while he was out at the Big Leaf Maple Conference earlier this year. So again, that is on Thursday, December 19th at 7 o'clock. We will not have our regular Out of the Woods episode in November.
And I'll just put in a plug. If you are really intrigued about some of the things that Joel was sharing tonight, some of the techniques and all about flavor and syrup production, Joel was one of the authors of many chapters in the third edition of the North American Maple Syrup Producers Manual, but especially Chapter 7, Syrup Production. So if you want to dig into some of this information a little bit more, you can go get your free electronic copy of that at mapleresearch.org.
Yes, thank you for that, Abby. And thank you, Joel and Abby, for being here with us this evening.